Just move, Mom. You're in my light. The words, a cold little dart, find their mark. My daughter, Jessica, doesn't look at me as she says them. Her attention is fixed on the small, glowing screen of her phone, which is propped precariously on a stack of my own architecture books. With the toe of her expensive-looking heel, she shoves the base of my wheelchair. The jolt is slight, but it rocks my entire world. I am an object to be repositioned, a piece of furniture spoiling the shot. Her phone is live. A river of tiny hearts flows up the side of the screen, a digital tide of affection from strangers for a daughter they do not know, directed at a mother they cannot see. Not the real me, anyway. We're live, everyone. Saying a huge happy 72nd birthday to my sweet, sweet mama. Jessica's voice shifts, coated in a thick, cloying honey that has become a poison in my ears. She beams at the phone, a wide, perfect smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Her eyes, when they flick briefly towards me, are as cold and flat as a winter lake. On the low table in front of us sits a cake. It's from a grocery store, the frosting, a lurid pink. In shaky blue icing, it reads, "Happy birthday, Chloe, Chloey." 41 years my son has been on this earth, 38 for my daughter. They have lived in my house, eaten my food, spent my money, and they still don't know how to spell my name. Or maybe they just never thought it was important enough to learn. The candles, a waxy 7 and 2, sit on the cake, their wicks pale and untouched. No one has made a move to light them. A celebration requires warmth. There is none here. A comment pops up on the screen, which Jessica reads aloud with theatrical delight. "OMG, Jessica, you are the best daughter ever. Your mom is so lucky to have you." "Oh, you guys are too sweet," Jessica gushes, tilting her head. The manufactured humility is an art form she has perfected. I'm the lucky one. Truly, taking care of my mom is the greatest blessing of my life. She's my whole world. My whole world. I stare at the floral pattern on the wallpaper, a design I chose decades ago, in another life. A life where I had a voice, where I made decisions, where the walls of this house were a comfort, not a cage. Now, I am a prop in the carefully curated narrative of my daughter's life. A silent, smiling, wheelchair-bound accessory to her brand. The hashtag #FamilyFirst, probably hovers just below the screen, a cruel irony only I can appreciate. My son, Liam, materializes from the shadows of the hallway. He leans against the doorframe, scrolling through his own phone, a permanent scowl etched onto his face. He looks bored, impatient. He catches my eye for a second and gives a barely perceptible eye roll, as if we are co-conspirators in his suffering. But we are not. He is a willing participant in this charade because he too needs something. He always needs something. Jessica, sensing his presence without looking, hisses through her smiling teeth, her voice a low, venomous whisper that the phone's microphone won't catch. "Get over here, Liam. People are asking where you are. Play your part." He sighs, a sound of profound theatrical suffering, and pushes himself off the wall. He ambles over, forcing a smile that looks more like a grimace. He places a hand on my shoulder. It doesn't feel like a gesture of affection. It feels like an anchor, heavy and possessive. His fingers dig slightly into the thin fabric of my blouse. "Here's the handsome son," Jessica coos to her audience. "We're all here for Mom's big day." Liam leans down, his breath smelling faintly of stale coffee and desperation. "Happy birthday, Mom," he mutters, his eyes on Jessica's phone, gauging his appearance in the little screen. The comments erupt again. "The whole family." "Liam, you look great." "Chloe is glowing." I am not glowing. I am disappearing. I am a ghost at my own party. My face is a placid mask, a technique I have honed over the last few years. If I show nothing, they can project anything they want onto me. Happiness, contentment, gentle confusion. A blank canvas is a useful tool for an artist. And Jessica is nothing if not an artist of deception. "We got you something special, Mama," Jessica announces, reaching behind a garish, oversized bouquet of flowers that I know for a fact she had delivered for herself this morning. She produces a sleek, beautifully wrapped box and places it on my lap. The weight of it feels foreign. "We wanted to make sure you could stay connected with the world." With a flourish for the camera, she unties the ribbon and lifts the lid. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, is the latest model of a tablet. It's thin, metallic, and impossibly glossy, a marvel of technology. "Look at that screen," Jessica says, holding it up for her followers to see. "Crystal clear. You can watch all your old black and white movies, Mom. Or we can video chat when I have to travel for work." My hands rest in my lap. The knuckles are swollen with arthritis. My fingers tremble with a persistent tremor that makes holding a fork a challenge and signing my own name a slow, deliberate agony. The smooth, unforgiving surface of a touchscreen is as useless to me as a car without an engine. This gift is not for me. It is a prop for her, proof of her generosity. It will be photographed, praised, and then it will likely disappear into her own designer handbag. She doesn't even bother to hand it to me. She places it carefully back in its box and sets it on the table, angled perfectly so the brand name is visible to the camera. "Okay, time for the song," she declares, clapping her hands together. She begins to sing Happy Birthday in a voice that is loud, sharp, and painfully off-key. It's a performance, not a tribute. It's for the audience, not for me. Liam joins in, his voice a low, bored monotone, a reluctant harmony to her shrill melody. "Happy birthday, dear Chloe." They can't even get my name right in a song. I close my eyes. For a heartbeat, the grating sound fades, and I'm transported. A different room, a different time. The scent of a real cake, a spice cake I baked myself. The warm, rumbling baritone of my husband, Richard, singing the same song, his hand covering mine, his thumb stroking my knuckles. The memory is so vivid, it's a physical blow, a ghost of a touch that makes my current reality feel 100 times colder. It vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving behind an ache that settles deep in my bones. I open my eyes. The song is over. A cascade of digital cake and balloon emojis fills the screen. Jessica is scanning the comments, her face alight with the validation she craves. "She looks so peaceful," she reads one aloud. "Like an angel. Oh, that is the sweetest thing I have ever heard. Peaceful. They mistake paralysis for peace. They mistake numbness for contentment. It's easier that way." Liam is getting agitated. He subtly checks his watch, then leans towards Jessica's ear. "Is this almost done? The crypto market is going crazy. I need to make a move." Jessica shoots him a look of pure fury, a silent, vicious promise of a fight to come. But to her phone, she is all grace. "Mama, do you want to say anything to all your new friends online? They're all sending so much love." She thrusts the phone towards my face. The built-in light is blinding, a sterile white glare that erases all the lines and shadows, making me a flat, featureless image. I am caught in the beam, a deer in the headlights of her ambition. The silence stretches. What would I say if I could? Help me. The words are a stone in my throat, too heavy to lift. This is all a lie. My children are holding me captive. But my voice is a rusted gate, long unused. My silence is my answer, and as always, it is conveniently misinterpreted. Jessica pulls the phone back with a soft, practiced laugh. "Oh, she's just a little shy. Overwhelmed by all the love today. It's a lot for her to take in. Aren't you, my sweet mama?" She reaches out and pats my cheek. The gesture is not gentle. It's a condescending pat, the kind one gives a dog or a small child. Her long, perfectly manicured nails, the color of blood, feel cold against my skin. Finally, she seems satisfied. She has milked this moment for all it's worth. She's harvested enough likes, enough comments, enough pity and praise to sustain her for another week. "Okay, my loves," she chirps into the phone, her energy somehow still at its peak. "We're going to log off now and enjoy some private family time with this delicious cake. Thank you all for joining and for making my mom's day so, so special. We love you. Bye-bye." She blows an exaggerated kiss to the lens. She stabs at the screen. The little red live icon vanishes, and the world changes. In the instant the broadcast ends, the light in Jessica's eyes dies. The radiant smile collapses into a sneer of utter contempt and exhaustion. The mask doesn't just slip, it shatters. "Christ, that was brutal," she says, her voice stripped of all its artificial sweetness, now flat and hard as concrete. She snatches her phone off my books, not caring as they tumble onto the floor. Liam grunts in agreement, already pulling out his own phone. "Finally. So, about that 50 grand I need." "Shut up, Liam," Jessica snaps, not even looking at him. She's staring at me, but not seeing me. She's looking at a task, a chore that needs to be completed. I just spent an entire hour performing for her. I'm drained. She turns her full, chilling attention to me. The icy command is back in her voice. "Okay, show's over. Time for bed." She doesn't wait for a reply. She doesn't ask if I'm ready. She grabs the handles of my wheelchair and wrenches it backwards, turning me away from the table. The movement is rough, jarring my teeth. As she pushes me down the hallway towards the sterile silence of my room, I catch one last glimpse of the living room. The misspelled cake sits on the table, a sad, uneaten monument. The candles are still unlit. The expensive tablet is still in its box. The props are being left on the stage. And I, the main prop, am being wheeled back into storage until I am needed again. My name is Chloe. Before I was a mother, a widow, or a prop in my own life, I was an architect. I remember the specific scent of graphite on vellum, the satisfying rasp of a sharp pencil carving a future out of a blank sheet. I didn't just draw buildings. I sketched skylines that conversed with the clouds. My hands, now spotted and frail, once raised glass and steel titans from the earth. I built sanctuaries, corporate headquarters, homes where families would grow. My dreams were tangible things, built of concrete and light, standing tall against the horizon. I had a name that was spoken with respect in boardrooms and on construction sites. That name, my name, felt like it was mine. Then I met Richard. He wasn't a titan of industry. He was a titan of ambition, a man who moved through a room and drew all the energy toward him, like a human black hole. His dreams were vast, political, and all-consuming. When he looked at me, he saw not just a woman he loved, but a partner who could build the perfect facade for his ascent. And I, swept up in the vortex of his charisma, in the genuine love I felt for him, willingly folded my blueprints away. One by one, I tucked my skylines into a drawer, replacing them with guest lists for fundraisers, speeches to edit, and the quiet, steady work of being the perfect political wife. I remember one evening, at a sterile political dinner, I found myself sketching on a cocktail napkin. It was a design for a small, free library, a little glass box to be tucked into a park. Richard saw it. He didn't scold me. He was too clever for that. He simply placed his hand over mine, his touch warm and firm. "Darling," he whispered, his voice a smooth caress meant only for me. "Your focus is needed here. They're all watching you." He smiled, and I smiled back, folding the napkin and tucking away that last small piece of myself. I traded my drafting table for dining tables, my hard hat for Chanel hats. I became an architect of a different kind, constructing his career, his image, our life together. And for a long time, I convinced myself that his success was my success, that his dream was enough for us both. When he died, the world saw the grieving widow of a respected statesman. They saw the beautiful home, the legacy, the immense fortune he left behind. They didn't see the fine print. They didn't see the final, cruel twist of his control. I sat in a leather chair that smelled of old paper and dust in our lawyer's office. My children, Liam and Jessica, on either side of me, their grief already seeming performative. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Albright, cleared his throat and read the words that would become the bars of my new cage. The bulk of Richard's $32 million estate, the money earned while I stood silently by his side, would be placed in a trust. I would be the beneficiary, but the trust would only remain active, and I would only receive my generous living allowance under one condition. I had to live under the care of my children. The room went silent. I could feel Liam shift in his seat, a subtle vibration of avarice. Jessica's perfectly manicured hand twitched. Mr. Albright looked at me over his spectacles, a flicker of something, pity perhaps, in his eyes before it was replaced by professional detachment. Richard's voice, smooth and reasonable, echoed in my mind from 1,000 different conversations. "It's for the best, Chloe. It's to keep the family together." That's what he would have said. But sitting there, a prisoner in my own mourning clothes, I heard it for what it was. It wasn't a condition, it was a life sentence. My beautiful home, the one I had helped design, with its soaring ceilings and wide windows, had just become a gilded cage. And so the wardens of my prison took up residence. They didn't have to move in, of course. They were already there, like mold that had been slowly growing in the dark corners of the house for years. My son, Liam, is 41, a ghost who haunts the hallways of my home. He is a walking monument to failed potential, a tech bro who missed the boom and is now forever chasing the echo. He speaks a language of cryptocurrency and NFTs that I don't understand, using big words to mask the smallness of his achievements. He sees me not as his mother, but as an ATM with a failing memory. Just last week, he drifted into my study, where I was trying to read. He didn't greet me. He never does. He hovered by the door, his eyes darting around the room, landing on everything but me. "Hey, Mom," he mumbled, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Just, checking in on you, making sure you're okay." His concern was as thin as tracing paper. I knew what he wanted. I watched as he feigned interest in a book on the shelf before his gaze slid to my purse on the console table. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've got this incredible opportunity. A new coin. It's pre-launch. It's a sure thing. We could double your investment in a week." He doesn't ask. He presumes. He sees the vast fortune Richard left as his personal slush fund, and me as the doddering old gatekeeper who can be easily fooled. I remember a little boy with bright, curious eyes who used to build spaceships out of cardboard boxes in the living room, telling me he was going to be the first man to walk on Mars. Now, those eyes are dull, shifty. The ambition is still there, but it has curdled into something desperate and ugly. He sees a frail, senile woman who needs to be managed. He has no idea that I hear him on the phone in the garden, talking to one of his friends. "Yeah, she's fine," he'd said, his voice dripping with condescension. "The memory's basically shot. It's sad, but honestly, it makes things easier. Just gotta keep the old ATM spitting out cash." He laughed, a short, ugly bark. I closed my eyes, and in my mind, a steel door slammed shut. And then there is Jessica, my daughter, the social media influencer. If Liam is a ghost, Jessica is a hologram. A shimmering, curated projection of a life that doesn't exist. Her entire world is filtered, staged, and hashtagged, and I am her favorite prop. She curates a public persona of the devoted daughter, the loving caregiver to her aging mother. My home is no longer a home. It's her soundstage. The garden where I used to plant roses is now the backdrop for her candid moments of reflection. My living room, with its comfortable, worn furniture, is the set for her sponsored posts. She talks to me in two distinct voices. There is the voice for her phone, for her 1.2 million followers. It's sweet, high-pitched, and dripping with artificial empathy. "Oh, you guys, I'm just spending some quality time with my sweet mom today," she'll say, aiming the phone's camera at me while I sit in my wheelchair. It's so important to cherish these moments. Family. First, #making memories. Then, the moment the recording stops, the mask drops. Her smile vanishes, and her voice becomes flat and impatient. "Mom, can you just try to look a little less miserable? You're ruining the aesthetic." She treats me like an uncooperative piece of antique furniture she can't wait to get rid of, but must polish up for guests. They live in my house, a house whose every line and angle I conceived. They eat my food, prepared by a cook I pay for. They breathe my air, filling it with their resentment and greed. They walk on floors I chose, under a roof I designed, all while believing it is theirs by right. They have replaced the scent of lemon oil and old books with the metallic tang of Jessica's hairspray and the stale smell of takeout from Liam's room. The quiet hum of the house has been replaced by the constant ping of Jessica's phone notifications and the low thud of bass from Liam's video games. They talk about me as if I'm not in the room, their voices loud and careless. "We have to do something about her staring," Jessica will complain to Liam over breakfast. "It's creepy. Maybe we should up her dosage." Liam will grunt in agreement, his eyes glued to his laptop screen. "Whatever. Just make sure Albright gets the reports. He needs to see that we're caring for her." They think my mind is a fog, a landscape of forgotten memories and confused thoughts. They see the slow, careful movements of an old woman and mistake it for infirmity. They see my silence and mistake it for vacancy. They dress me, move me, and speak for me, convinced that the woman who designed skyscrapers and navigated the treacherous waters of political society has been reduced to a helpless child. They see a frail, senile old woman. They have no idea who I truly am, and they have no idea what a woman with nothing left to lose is capable of building. The silence in this house has a weight to it. It's not a peaceful quiet. It's the heavy, breathless silence of a room where a bomb might go off. Liam drifts through it, his usual cloud of failure and resentment momentarily replaced by a jittery, manic energy. He finds me in the sunroom, my fingers tracing the veins on a leaf of the wilting fern Jessica forgot to water. He doesn't sit. He hovers. "Mom," he begins, his voice pitched in that artificial, wheedling tone he uses when he wants something. It's the same voice he used as a boy when he wanted a later curfew. Now, the stakes are higher. I've come across something incredible, a real game changer. It's in the crypto space. Guaranteed returns. I mean, we're talking life-changing money. He paces, hands gesturing, painting a picture of a digital promised land. I listen, my face a placid mask. I have heard this song before in different keys with different lyrics. A can't-miss real estate venture, a revolutionary startup for artisanal toothpicks. They all end the same way, with my money vanishing into the ether of his incompetence. "I need some liquidity to get in on the ground floor, Mom. Just a short-term loan. $50,000. It's a sure thing. I'll have it back to you, doubled, inside a month." I look at his face, flushed with a salesman's desperate conviction. He's 41 years old, a man-child living in his mother's house, dreaming of get-rich-quick schemes. I feel a familiar wave of exhaustion wash over me. It's easier to yield than to fight. The arguments are always the same, and they always end with him raising his voice, his face contorting with a rage that frightens me, reminding me that I am old and small and he is not. "The account details, Liam," I say, my voice barely a whisper. His whole body relaxes, the predatory tension draining away, replaced by a triumphant gleam in his eye. He produces my laptop from his briefcase, setting it on the glass table with a thud that makes me flinch. He opens it, his fingers flying across the keyboard, navigating to my savings account with a familiarity that chills me. He turns the screen towards me. "Just need you to authorize the transfer, Mom. Right here." My hand trembles as I reach for the mouse. For a moment, my own history flashes before my eyes. The blueprints I drew, the structures I designed, buildings of steel and glass that will outlive me. I used to command teams of engineers. My signature on a document could approve millions of dollars for projects that reshaped skylines. Now my hand shakes as I'm about to sign away my security for a ghost of a promise. He sees my hesitation. His hand covers mine, his grip surprisingly strong, almost painful. He guides my finger to the trackpad and clicks. "There, all done. You're the best, Mom. You won't regret this." He snaps the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the silence. He doesn't kiss my cheek. He just gives my shoulder a quick, impersonal squeeze and walks away, already lost in his digital fantasy. The days that follow are quieter than usual. Liam is a ghost in the house, flitting in and out, his eyes glued to his phone. He avoids my gaze. He no longer eats at the dining table, preferring to take his meals in his room, the door firmly shut. A week passes. Then 2. The sure thing has faded from conversation. When I finally corner him in the hallway, the jittery energy is gone, replaced by a sullen, defensive posture. "Liam," I begin, my voice stronger than I expect. "The investment. You said a month." He sighs, a great theatrical exhalation of impatience. The mask of a concerned son drops into place, his features arranging themselves into a caricature of pity. "Oh, Mom." He pats my hand, his touch condescending. You're getting confused again. We talked about this. We did not talk about this, I say, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. Yes, we did. Don't you remember? He pulls his tablet from under his arm. That account was closed years ago, after Dad passed. We moved everything into a more stable trust. See? He holds up the screen. It shows a bank statement, a professional-looking PDF with the bank's logo at the top. It lists a balance of 0 and a note. Account closed by customer request. The numbers look too clean. The font is just slightly off, a detail only an architect's eye would catch. It's a forgery. A clumsy one, but he presents it with such unshakable confidence. You see, Mom, there was no $50,000 there to begin with. You must have been dreaming. He is so convincing, so earnest in his deception, that for a terrifying, dizzying moment, I almost believe him. A fog of doubt rolls in, thick and suffocating. Did I imagine the conversation in the sunroom? Was the transfer a phantom of my aging mind? He sees the flicker of uncertainty in my eyes and presses his advantage. It's okay, Mom. It happens. That's why we're here to take care of you. He smiles, a thin, triumphant smile, and walks away, leaving me alone in the hallway, the lie hanging in the air like poison gas. I am not just a bank to him. I am a ghost in my own life, my memories rewritten by those who stand to gain from my erasure. The following week, the house is no longer quiet. It buzzes with the impending arrival of Jessica's world. She is hosting a brunch, not for family but for her tribe, a coven of fellow influencers with blindingly white teeth and empty eyes. Caterers swarm the kitchen, their professional chatter a foreign language in my home. Florists arrange towering bouquets of flowers whose scent I can only imagine. The furniture in the living room is rearranged to be more Instagrammable. I am a piece of old furniture that is not Instagrammable. Jessica finds me in my armchair, watching the chaos unfold. She's wearing a silk robe, a phone pressed to her ear as she directs the staff with sharp, impatient gestures. She puts her call on hold. "Mom," she says, not looking at me, but at a spot on the wall behind my head. "It's going to get really loud in a bit. Lots of people. You'll be much more comfortable in your room. I'll have someone bring you a tray. It is not a suggestion. It is a command. I am being banished. I am the inconvenient truth in her perfectly curated life. I am the old, frail mother who doesn't fit the #family first brand unless filtered, cropped, and captioned. I say nothing. I simply wheel myself down the hall to my room, the muffled sounds of their laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses already starting. I close the door, and the lock clicks with a dreadful finality. For hours, I sit in the silence, a prisoner in my own home. The sounds of the party leak under the door, bursts of laughter, the thumping bass of some soulless electronic music, Jessica's high-pitched performative shrieks of delight. I can smell the aroma of seared scallops and truffle oil, a feast I am not welcome to share. My own lunch arrives on a plastic tray, delivered by a catering assistant who won't make eye contact. A cold sandwich with the crusts cut off and a small carton of milk, the kind they give to children in school. The next day, the house is quiet again, littered with the aftermath of the party. I am scrolling through Jessica's Instagram on an old iPad, and there it is. A post from yesterday's brunch. There are dozens of pictures, glossy, posed shots of her and her friends laughing, holding cocktails, showcasing their expensive clothes against the backdrop of my home. And then I see it. A photo of her and me. It was taken a few days ago. She had burst into my room, phone in hand. "Just one quick pic, Mom. Smile." She hadn't waited for me to smile. She had grabbed my hand, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin, leaned in close, and snapped the photo. The smile she wore was for the camera only. It vanished the second she heard the click. In the post, the photo is rendered in a soft, warm filter. My bewildered expression looks like one of quiet contentment. Her grip on my hand looks like a tender, supportive gesture. And the caption is a masterpiece of deceit. Sunday brunch with my favorite person in the whole world, feeling so blessed to have this time with my amazing mother. She's my rock, my inspiration. It's so important to cherish these moments. Family first. Elder care, #making memories. #blessed. The post has over 30,000 likes. The comments are a torrent of sycophantic praise. Jessica, you have the most beautiful soul. Your mother is so lucky to have such a devoted daughter. This is what it's all about. You're an inspiration. I stare at the screen, at the image of a loving daughter who doesn't exist, holding the hand of a happy mother I am not allowed to be. Each like, each comment, is a little shovel of dirt on the grave of my own reality. I am not a person. I am a prop. A story she tells to strangers. The ultimate betrayal, however, was yet to come. It arrived cloaked in the guise of concern, delivered by both of them in a rare, united front. They found me in the garden a few weeks later. The air was getting cooler. They stood before me, their faces arranged in expressions of strained sincerity. "Mom," Jessica started, her voice syrupy sweet. "We've been worried about you. You seem so tired lately." Liam nodded, his face a mask of solemn agreement. "That cough of yours isn't getting any better. We think you need a real break, a change of scenery." A cold knot formed in my stomach. I knew this tone. This was the prelude to something terrible. "We found this wonderful place," Jessica continued, her eyes shining with false enthusiasm. "A respite care home. It's lovely, like a resort. Top-of-the-line medical staff, beautiful grounds. They had a last-minute cancellation. A 2-week spot just opened up. It's perfect timing. We're going to be away for a couple of weeks ourselves," Liam added, a little too quickly. "A little trip to Maui, a family vacation. And we thought this way, you get your own little vacation too. You can rest, recharge, and you'll be looked after 24/7. A vacation. They were packaging my abandonment as a gift. "I don't want to go to a home," I said, my voice thin. "I want to stay here." "Now, Mom, don't be difficult," Liam said, his voice hardening. "It's all arranged. It's for your own good. We're just trying to take care of you." There was no arguing. I was a problem to be managed, a piece of luggage to be checked. The day they took me, the car was silent. They sat in the front, murmuring to each other, their backs to me. We drove past the familiar landmarks of my life, the library, the park, the little bakery on the corner, and ventured into a part of the city I didn't recognize. The manicured lawns gave way to cracked pavement and chain-link fences. The trees were replaced by stark, concrete buildings stained with grime. The car pulled up to a bleak, one-story brick building. A small, faded sign near the door read, "Oakwood Senior Care Facility." This was not a resort. The air itself seemed weary. As soon as the car door opened, the smell hit me. A cloying mix of industrial disinfectant, stale urine, and boiled cabbage. This was not a last-minute spot in a luxury home. This was a low-cost, state-run facility. This was where they dumped the people they wanted to forget. Liam and Jessica didn't get out of the car. A harried-looking woman in scrubs came out to the curb. "Chloe?" she asked, her eyes already moving to the next task on her list. Jessica just nodded from the driver's seat. "That's her. All her information is in the file we sent." She offered me a bright, false smile. "Be good, Mom. We'll call you every day. Have a wonderful rest." Liam gave a weak wave. "Enjoy your vacation." Then they drove away, leaving me on the curb with a single, small suitcase. They didn't look back. The 2 weeks that followed were a descent into a living hell. My room was a cramped space I shared with a woman who moaned in her sleep. The window was sealed shut and looked out onto a brick wall. The linoleum floors were sticky. A dark patch of mold crept out from behind the radiator, and my cough, the one they had feigned such concern over, grew deeper, rattling in my chest. The days bled into one another, a gray smear of silent meals on plastic trays, of hours spent staring at a television in a common room filled with the lost and the forgotten. The staff were not cruel, but they were exhausted, overworked, their movements mechanical, their eyes vacant. I was a body to be fed, a bed to be checked on. I was no longer Chloe. I was bed 7B, and they didn't call. Not once. Every day, I waited. Every day, The phone in the hallway remained silent. The hope I harbored on the first day curdled into a bitter certainty by the third. They had not just left me here, they had erased me from their minds. On the 10th day, a young aide, a girl named Sophia, with kind eyes, saw me sitting by the window. She must have seen the despair on my face. "Are you okay, ma'am?" she asked. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. "Do you want to see a picture of my dog?" she offered, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through a few pictures of a happy golden retriever, and then she paused on her social media feed. "Oh, look, Hawaii. I've always wanted to go." She showed me the phone. And there they were. Liam and Jessica, standing on a pristine white sand beach, the turquoise ocean sparkling behind them. They were flanked by Jessica's husband and their 2 children, all of them tan and grinning, wearing garish floral shirts. "The whole family together at last. Aloha," the caption read. And there, squeezed between Jessica and Liam, was me. It was an old picture, taken years ago at a family barbecue. They had crudely photoshopped it, cutting out my image and pasting it into their happy vacation scene. My pasted-in figure was slightly blurry, the lighting all wrong. I looked like a ghost at their feast. They hadn't just abandoned me in a place reeking of decay. They had simultaneously curated a public lie that I was with them, celebrating. They had not only discarded the real me, but they had manufactured a better, more convenient version to show the world. Staring at that digital ghost, that fraudulent image of myself on a beach I would never see, something inside me broke. It wasn't my heart. It was the last fragile thread of maternal love I had clung to for all these years. The pain was so sharp, so absolute, it was clarifying. It burned away the confusion, the self-doubt, the hope. In the ashes, something new and hard and cold began to form. I was not a confused old woman. I was not a prop, and I was not a ghost. I was a prisoner. And in that moment, in the stench and silence of my forgotten hell, I began to plan my escape. The return from that so-called respite was a return to a familiar cage, but the cage was now tainted. A cough had taken root in my lungs, a dry, rattling thing that echoed the decay of the facility they had left me in. It was a physical souvenir of their betrayal, a constant, rasping reminder of the mold that crept up the walls of that state-run hell. The cough wasn't loud, but it was persistent, a ghost in my throat. It worsened in the damp evenings, shaking my frail frame until tears pricked my eyes. Jessica, of course, noticed, not with concern, but with irritation. Every time I coughed during one of her inane phone calls, she'd shoot me a look of pure venom, as if I were doing it on purpose to sabotage her. "Mother, can you please control that?" she'd hiss, her hand cupped over her phone's microphone. "I'm trying to close a brand deal." The final straw for her was a call from a social worker, a routine follow-up after my stay at the facility. Jessica answered, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. I could hear the woman on the other end asking about my well-being. My cough chose that exact moment to make a grand, hacking appearance from the other room. There was a pause. Jessica's voice became tight, strained. She ended the call quickly. Minutes later, she stormed into my room, her face a mask of fury. "Do you know what you've done? They want to do a home visit. A home visit. Do you have any idea how that looks? They'll think we're not taking care of you." "Perhaps they'd be right," I whispered, the words scratching my throat on the way out. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't you start. This is your fault. That disgusting noise. We need to fix this now. We can't have some government busybody poking around here. It would ruin everything." Her solution, as always, was born of self-preservation, not compassion. It wasn't a doctor she called, it was an agency. To avoid any official scrutiny, any paper trail that could lead back to the mold-infested room where they'd abandoned me, she would hire a private nurse, someone to drug me into silence and keep up appearances for the impending visit. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. Jessica, all smiles and performative grace, opened it to a young woman. "You must be Maria," Jessica chirped, her voice several octaves too high. "We are so thrilled to have you." Mom's just been a little under the weather, and we want to give her the absolute best care. Maria Vance was 35, but her eyes held a quiet gravity that made her seem much older. She was of average height, with dark hair pulled back in a simple, neat bun. She wore plain gray scrubs that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. There was no artifice to her, no forced smile. She simply nodded, her gaze sweeping past Jessica's garish, oversized handbag to find me sitting in my wheelchair in the hall. Her eyes, a deep, thoughtful brown, met mine. There was no pity in them, just a calm, professional assessment. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Davies," she said. Her voice was low and steady, a soothing balm after the shrieking chaos of Jessica and Liam. Jessica led her into my room, chattering the whole time about my delicate constitution and how much they adored me. Maria said nothing, her attention focused entirely on the space. She took in the unemptied wastebasket, the glass of water on the nightstand that had been there since morning, the faint layer of dust on the picture frames. Her silence was more damning than any accusation. After Jessica finally left, closing the door with a theatrical, "I'll leave you two to get acquainted," a profound quiet settled over the room. It was the first real peace I'd felt in months. Maria didn't immediately start fussing with medical equipment. She moved to the window and pulled the heavy curtains back a few more inches, letting in the afternoon sun. Then she walked over to my wheelchair. She knelt, not so she was looking up at me, but so our eyes were level. It was a small gesture of respect that felt monumental. "The air in here is a bit stale," she said softly. "Would you like me to open the window a little?" I was so stunned by the simple question, the offering of a choice, that I could only nod. She opened it, and a breeze carrying the scent of cut grass and roses from the garden filled the room. She then went to my nightstand, picked up the old glass of water, and emptied it into the ensuite bathroom. She returned with a fresh glass, cool and beaded with condensation, and placed it within my easy reach. She did it all with an economy of movement that was both efficient and graceful. Finally, she turned to me. She gently took my wrist, her fingers cool and dry as she checked my pulse. Her touch was firm, but not clinical. It was human. After a moment, she looked at my bedding, the single thin pillow propped awkwardly behind my head. "Are you comfortable, Mrs. Davies?" The question hit me with the force of a physical blow. "Are you comfortable?" Not, "Stop making that noise," or "Don't be a burden." Not a command or a complaint. A simple, honest question about my state of being. No one had asked me that in years. Not since Richard died. The raw, unexpected kindness of it broke through the dam of my composure. A single tear escaped and traced a path through the fine wrinkles on my cheek. I couldn't find my voice. I just shook my head, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. She saw the tear. She didn't comment on it, didn't make a fuss. She simply moved to the bed, plumped the pillow, and then retrieved another from the linen closet. She gently slid her arm behind my back, helping me lean forward with a strength that surprised me. She arranged the pillows perfectly, creating a soft, supportive cradle for my head and neck. As I sank back into them, a sigh of relief escaped my lips. The tension in my shoulders, a knot I had carried for so long I'd forgotten it was there, began to dissolve. "Better?" she asked. I nodded, finally managing a hoarse, "Yes, thank you." She gave a small, almost sad smile. "It's my job." But I knew, even then, that it was more than a job for her. There was a depth of empathy in her quiet actions that spoke of a shared understanding of pain. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't just a prop or a problem. In the presence of this quiet, sad-eyed stranger, I was a person again. A few days melted into a week. Maria's presence became a silent, steady rhythm in my chaotic world. She arrived at 8 in the morning and left at 6 in the evening. She never spoke ill of Jessica or Liam, even when she witnessed their casual cruelty firsthand. She'd see Liam snatch my reading glasses off my face to clean his phone screen, or hear Jessica berating me for spilling a drop of tea, and a flicker of something, anger, sorrow, would cross her face before being replaced by that mask of calm professionalism. Her care was my shield. She made sure my meals were what I requested, not whatever scraps were left over. She administered my medication on a precise schedule, and my cough, under her attentive care, began to subside. She would read to me in the afternoons, her low voice weaving stories that allowed me to escape the four walls of my room. We didn't talk about my children. We didn't talk about my confinement. We existed in a bubble of quiet routine she had created, a sanctuary in the heart of my own personal prison. One gray, overcast afternoon, the kind where the sky feels heavy and low, Maria was performing one of her quiet, thorough tasks: dusting. She moved through the room with her usual grace, her cloth sweeping over surfaces, leaving cleanliness in its wake. She came to the large silver-framed photograph on my dresser. It was my wedding portrait. A much younger me, smiling hopefully, and Richard, my late husband, looking directly at the camera. He was handsome, I couldn't deny that, with a politician's easy smile and eyes that promised the world. Maria picked up the frame. I watched her in the reflection of the dresser mirror. She polished the glass, then her hand stilled. She froze completely, her gaze fixed on Richard's face. The cloth in her hand was motionless. The air in the room grew thick, charged with a sudden, inexplicable tension. Her back was to me, but I could see the rigid line of her shoulders. "I knew a man who looked like him," she said. Her voice was a murmur, so soft it was almost carried away by the silence. It wasn't conversational. It was the sound of a memory surfacing, unwelcome and sharp. "He was a politician," I said, my own voice quiet. "Richard Davies. He was quite well known in his day." Maria remained still for a long moment. Then she slowly, deliberately, placed the photograph back on the dresser, her movements precise, as if handling something fragile and dangerous. She turned to face me. The professional calm was gone. In its place was a raw, unguarded sorrow. The ancient sadness I had first glimpsed in her eyes now laid bare. It was profound and bottomless. "He destroyed my mother," she said. The words were not accusatory. They were a simple, devastating statement of fact, delivered with the weight of a lifelong burden. A cold dread, slick and oily, began to seep into my bones. "Your mother?" I asked, my throat suddenly tight. She looked at the photograph again, not at the smiling man, but as if seeing a monster. "My mother. Her name was Eleanor." She paused, and the name she spoke next was not a whisper to me, but a thunderclap that shattered the quiet room and the quiet spaces of my memory. Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance. The name echoed in the silent chambers of my heart, a ghost I had tried to bury for decades. Eleanor Vance, my husband's mistress. The scandal that had nearly derailed his first major campaign. The woman he had spoken of with a mixture of passion and contempt. The one he swore he had ended things with, cleanly. The woman he told me had been compensated, had been taken care of, had simply disappeared. He had called her unstable, a regrettable mistake. He had painted her as a predator. I, the dutiful political wife, had chosen to believe him. I had to. Believing him was the price of admission for the life he wanted, the life I had sacrificed my own career for. But Richard had lied. He hadn't just ended it. He hadn't just compensated her. According to the quiet woman standing before me, he had destroyed her. He had bankrupted and abandoned her. And this woman, this kind, gentle soul who had shown me more compassion in a week than my own children had in a decade, was her daughter. My world tilted on its axis. The air rushed from my lungs. This wasn't a coincidence. This was not the random hand of fate delivering a competent nurse to my door. This was something else. This was a reckoning. The universe, in its own mysterious and terrible way, was closing a circle I hadn't even known was still open. The daughter of the woman my husband ruined was now the only person standing between me and complete ruin at the hands of my own children. This was destiny, in its cruelest and most intricate form. The revelation of Maria's identity changed everything. The silent, professional bubble we had existed in popped, and in its place, a fragile, tentative alliance began to form. We started to talk. In hushed tones in the evenings, after Liam had gone out and Jessica had locked herself in her room to edit her vapid videos, we pieced together the two sides of a story I had only ever known one part of. She told me of her mother, Eleanor, not as the unstable homewrecker Richard had described, but as a brilliant, vibrant woman who had been a promising artist. She spoke of how Richard had pursued her, showered her with promises of a future, and then, when the affair became a political liability, had systematically dismantled her life. He used his legal connections to drain her finances in a bogus business deal they'd started together, and his social influence to brand her as mentally unwell, isolating her from her friends and community. Eleanor Vance never recovered. She had died a few years ago, a broken woman, a shadow of her former self. Hearing this, I felt a shame so profound it was a physical sickness. I had been complicit in my ignorance. I had been the good wife, standing by my man, and my silence had provided the cover for him to destroy another woman. My own gilded cage had been built on the foundations of Eleanor's ruin. The will, the cruel codicil that had imprisoned me, was not just a final act of control over me, but the final echo of the cruelty he had perfected on Maria's mother. "He trapped you both," Maria said one evening, her eyes dark. "Her with lies, and you with his will. It was then we decided we needed help, real help." Maria, through a nursing network, found the name of a lawyer, a Mr. Davies, no relation thankfully. He was known for taking on difficult elder abuse cases. He wasn't with a big flashy firm. His office was small, unassuming, and he had a reputation for being a bulldog. Maria arranged a secret meeting. I feigned a bad headache and she insisted on taking me for fresh air. She drove me to a small brick building miles from our neighborhood. Mr. Davies was a man in his late 50s with tired eyes and a rumpled suit, but when I began to speak, he listened with an intensity that was unnerving. I told him everything: the will, Liam's financial deceptions, Jessica's manipulative social media campaigns, the horrifying respite in Maui. Maria sat beside me, a silent, supportive presence, corroborating the details of my recent neglect. Mr. Davies steepled his fingers, his expression grim. "This is a classic, nasty case of financial and emotional abuse," he said, his voice a low growl. "The will is diabolical, but that clause, the one tying your inheritance to their care, it's our biggest hurdle. We need to prove that their care constitutes abuse, thereby breaking their end of the contract." We left his office with a sliver of hope, the first I'd felt in a very long time. But hope is a dangerous thing. It makes a sound, and somehow Liam heard it. Perhaps he noticed the change in me, a new light in my eyes. Perhaps he had a friend who worked in the county clerk's office. I never found out how, but he knew I had seen a lawyer, and he retaliated with the cold, swift brutality I should have expected. A week later, a courier delivered a thick manila envelope. My name was on it. My hands trembled as I used a letter opener to slice it open. Inside was a letter, not from Liam, but from a high-powered law firm, the kind with names like Sword Clashes, Blackwood, Thorne Associates. Maria read it aloud, her voice steady despite the venomous words. It was a formal notice. Liam, as my concerned son, was preparing to file a petition with the court. The words leaped off the page, each one a nail in a potential coffin. Petition for an emergency competency hearing. Request for temporary conservatorship. They were claiming I was suffering from advanced dementia, that my recent actions, hiring a lawyer, questioning my finances, were not signs of clarity, but of paranoia and confusion. And then came the most vicious blow. The letter stated they had reason to believe that a third party, a recently hired nurse, was exerting undue influence over me, manipulating me for her own financial gain. They were going to have me declared legally insane. They were going to strip me of my rights, my autonomy, my very identity. They would take control of everything, not through the will's murky conditions, but through the cold, hard power of the law. Liam would become my legal guardian, my keeper, and Maria, my only ally, would be painted as a predator and cast out, likely facing legal trouble of her own. The letter was a declaration of war. They weren't just trying to control my money anymore. They were trying to erase me. The sliver of hope from Mr. Davies' office was extinguished, replaced by a cold, suffocating terror. The legal threat hung over us like a guillotine. Mr. Davies assured us it was a scare tactic, a common move for bullies, but the fear it instilled was real and potent. They want you to panic and back down, he'd said over the phone. Our first job is to find any and all documentation you have. Old bank statements, investment reports, anything Richard left behind. We need to build our own arsenal. And so, the search began. One rainy afternoon, while Maria was organizing my medical files, I tasked myself with going through the old mahogany secretary desk in the study, a room I hadn't spent much time in for years. It was filled with Richard's old things. I was looking for financial records, deeds, anything that might help Mr. Davies. My fingers, dusted with the residue of forgotten years, sorted through brittle papers and dry-rotted leather binders. In the back of a deep drawer, tucked beneath a stack of old tax returns, was a small, black external hard drive. I didn't even remember owning it. Curiosity piqued. I asked Maria to help me connect it to her laptop. After a moment, a folder appeared on the screen, simply labeled Home. I clicked it. It was a trove of old digital videos dating back 15, 20 years. The file names were simple: Park 2004, Christmas 2002, Jessica's 16th birthday. I clicked on Park 2004. The video flickered to life. The quality was grainy, the sound tinny, but the image was painfully clear. It was me. A younger me, my hair still mostly brown, my face lined with laughter instead of grief. I was pushing a swing. On one side was Liam, a lanky teenager with a goofy grin, shouting, "Higher, Mom, higher!" On the other was Jessica, her face alight with pure, unadulterated joy, her hair flying around her as she soared towards the sky. The sound was filled with their laughter and my own, a sound I barely recognized anymore. I clicked another file, Beach 2006. There we were, the three of us, building a sandcastle. My hands, then still strong and steady, packed wet sand into a bucket while Liam and Jessica dug a moat. Richard was behind the camera, his voice a low, happy rumble. "That's a fine castle, Chloe. Fit for a queen." I remembered that day. I remembered the warmth of the sun on my skin and the genuine, uncomplicated love I felt for the two children splashing in the surf. It was real. That love, that happiness, it had all been real once. I clicked off the video, the laptop screen going dark. My reflection stared back at me, a pale, haggard old woman. A wave of guilt so powerful it felt like drowning washed over me. What was I doing? I was plotting against them, my own children, the same children whose laughter I had just heard, whose small hands I had once held. The plan we were forming with Mr. Davies, the path of retribution I was heading down. Was it too monstrous? Was this revenge? Or was it just the bitter, ugly act of a mother destroying her own young? My righteous anger suddenly felt petty, my quest for justice nothing more than a grotesque family squabble taken to an extreme. Tears began to stream down my face, hot and silent. I was a mother. How could I do this to them, no matter what they had become? Maria must have heard the silence. She came into the study and found me slumped in my chair, the laptop dark, my face wet with tears. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just stood there for a moment, her presence a quiet anchor in my swirling sea of doubt. She saw the conflict in my eyes, the maternal agony that was tearing me apart. She left the room without a word. I thought she was giving me space, but she returned a minute later. In her hand, she held her wallet. She opened it and took out a small, faded photograph, its edges soft and worn from years of handling. She didn't speak. She just held it out to me. I took it. The photo was of a beautiful woman with a radiant smile and eyes that sparkled with life and intelligence. She was standing in front of an easel, a paintbrush in her hand, a smudge of blue paint on her cheek. It was Eleanor Vance. But it was an Eleanor I had never imagined. Not a victim, not a homewrecker, but a vibrant artist, full of promise. Then, Maria gently turned the photo over in my hand. On the back, in faint, spidery handwriting, was a date from 10 years ago. Beneath it, another photo was tucked, a more recent one. It showed the same woman, but she was unrecognizable. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow and empty. The light was gone, all of it. The woman in the second photo was a ghost, a shell of the person in the first. That was what my husband had done. That was the end result of his regrettable mistake. Maria still hadn't said a word. She didn't need to. The 2 photographs told the entire story. My happy memories on the hard drive were real, but they were not the whole truth. The whole truth included this. It included the destruction of this bright, beautiful woman. My children were not just being cruel. They were continuing a legacy. They were the inheritors of Richard's ruthlessness, his capacity to drain the life from others for their own benefit. They were doing to me what he had done to Eleanor. I looked from the haunted eyes of Eleanor Vance to my own reflection in the dark laptop screen. The guilt didn't vanish, but it transformed. It settled, deep and cold, into something else. Something hard. My resolve, which had crumbled into a pile of maternal sentimentality, began to reform. It was no longer just about getting my money back. It was about justice for Eleanor. It was about breaking the cycle of destruction that my husband had started and that my children were so eagerly perpetuating. I handed the photograph back to Maria. Our eyes met. My tears had dried. My resolve had hardened into steel. Liam began to panic. The lawyer's letter hadn't made me crumble as he'd expected. My silence, my new steely calm, seemed to unnerve him more than any outburst would have. He must have imagined me in secret meetings with Mr. Davies, rewriting wills and moving assets, cutting him and Jessica out of their golden egg-laying goose. His desperation made him clumsy. He approached me one morning, his demeanor a nauseating blend of feigned concern and forced cheerfulness. It was the same tone he used when he was about to ask for a large sum of money. "Morning, Mom," he chirped, placing a thick stack of papers and a pen on the table beside my chair. "Just a little bit of boring housekeeping to take care of. The bank is updating their systems, some new regulations. You know how it is. They just need your signature on a few routine forms to keep everything in order." He fanned the papers out. They were dense with legal and financial jargon, pages and pages of tiny print designed to be impenetrable. "I've already marked all the spots you need to sign with these little yellow stickies," he said, pointing. "It'll only take a second. Don't want your accounts to get frozen, do we?" I looked at the stack, then at his face. His eyes were flinty with anxiety, and a small bead of sweat trickled down his temple. He was a terrible liar. I played my part, the part they had cast for me. I squinted at the papers, feigning confusion. "Oh, Liam, it's so much. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Are you sure this is all necessary?" "Positive, Mom. It's just standard procedure. A formality." He pushed the pen into my hand, his fingers briefly closing over mine. His skin was clammy. This was it. A test. A trap. A part of me, the old me, wanted to throw the papers in his face. But the new me, the one forged in the fires of Maria's story and Mr. Davies' counsel, knew better. I took a shaky breath, letting my hand tremble slightly. "All right, dear, if you say so." One by one, I signed on the yellow stickered lines. I let my signature be a little more wobbly than usual, the letters less defined. I played the part of the frail, senile old woman they believed me to be. With each signature, I could feel Liam's relief washing over him in palpable waves. When I signed the last one, he let out a breath he seemed to have been holding the entire time. "There we go. All done. Thanks, Mom. You're the best." He gathered the papers with a swiftness that bordered on frantic, not even giving me a chance to look at them again. He patted my shoulder, a gesture devoid of any genuine affection, and practically fled the room. That evening, after Liam had left, Maria came to my room and closed the door. The air was still and heavy with unspoken questions. I looked at her and gave a slow, deliberate nod. I hadn't signed all the papers. While Liam was looking away for a split second, distracted by a text message, I had managed to slip the last document from the bottom of his stack and slide it under the cushion of my wheelchair. It was a risky move, but my instinct screamed that the most important document would be the last one, the one he was most eager to have signed. I retrieved it now. Maria took the single sheet of paper, and we spread it out on the table between us. It looked just like the others, a wall of dense text. Maria pulled out her phone and opened an app that turned its camera into a powerful magnifier. She held the phone over the document, and the tiny print loomed large and clear on the screen. We scanned through the legalese, the heretofores and whereases, and then, halfway down the page, we found it. Buried in a paragraph about account administration was the clause. It wasn't about updating systems. It wasn't routine. It was a durable power of attorney. The words were stark and absolute. By signing that paper, I would have granted Liam complete and irrevocable control over all of my assets, my properties, my entire financial existence. He would have the power to buy, sell, and transfer anything he wanted, without my consent, without my knowledge. He wouldn't need a conservatorship or a competency hearing. This single sheet of paper would have given him everything. We looked at the signature line at the bottom. It was blank, and right next to it was the little yellow sticky note he had placed, waiting for my shaky, unknowing hand. The forgery, had I signed it, would have been clumsy, but combined with their narrative of my supposed dementia, it would have been more than enough to hold up in court. He had almost won. He had almost taken everything with a simple, cheap trick. Maria looked at me, her eyes wide. I looked back at her, the document lying between us like a venomous snake we had just managed to corner. The fear was cold and sharp in my chest, but beneath it, something else was kindling. A cold, hard fury. This piece of paper wasn't just a failed attempt at theft. It was evidence. It was his greed, his arrogance, his utter contempt for me, all distilled onto a single page. It was the weapon he had tried to use against me, and now it was going to be ours. The meeting with Mr. Davies left a layer of ice on my soul, a welcome frost after years of burning humiliation. His office, filled with the scent of old paper and leather, was a sanctuary of logic and law in a world that had become a circus of emotion and deceit. He was a man of sharp angles and sharper intellect, his advice delivered with the dispassionate precision of a surgeon. "Chloe," he had said, his fingers steepled, "we have a path. It is narrow, and it is fraught with legal minds, but it is there. However, for it to work, we need two things: irrefutable proof, and for them to become so confident in their position that they grow careless. The power of attorney. Liam tricked you into signing is a dangerous weapon in his hands, but it is also the very thing that will make him feel invincible. For now, you must give them the victory they think they've already won. You must become the woman they believe you to be, frail, confused, and utterly dependent." His words didn't feel like a sentence. They felt like a key. A key to a performance I was born to play. I returned home not as Chloe Sterling, the architect who once designed skyscrapers that touched the clouds, but as a caricature, a ghost haunting the hallways of my own life. The next morning, the curtain rose. Jessica was in the kitchen, filming a "Get Ready With Me" segment on her phone, which was propped up against a $1,000 blender I'd never seen anyone use. She was talking about the importance of authentic living while smearing a shimmering highlighter on her cheeks. I wheeled myself slowly into the room, my movements deliberately shaky. "Good morning, dear," I said, my voice a thin, reedy version of its former self. "Morning, Mom," she replied without looking up from her phone's screen, her voice dripping with the saccharine sweetness she reserved for her followers. I let a moment of silence hang in the air. Is that Maria coming today?" I asked, looking towards the hallway. Jessica finally looked at me, her mask of patience already strained. "Mom, it's Jessica. Maria comes in the afternoon. We went over this yesterday." "Oh," I said, a vacant look on my face. "Of course. Jessica, you look so much like her sometimes." Maria and Jessica looked nothing alike. One was a beacon of quiet strength and compassion. The other was a black hole of narcissism. Jessica sighed, a loud, performative sound for her audience. She turned the phone slightly towards me. "You see, guys, it's getting a little harder for her to keep track of things. It's why it's so important for us to be here, to provide that stability." Later that day, Liam breezed in, smelling of stale coffee and desperation. He was waving a stack of papers. "Mom, just need you to initial these for the estate account," he said, his tone brisk and dismissive. "Just some routine stuff Mr. Henderson at the bank needs." I squinted at the papers, letting my hand tremble as I reached for the pen. I knew Mr. Henderson had retired 3 years ago. "Liam, darling," I began, pitching my voice to a higher, more fragile register. "What day is it today?" He stopped, his impatience flaring. "It's Tuesday, Mom. Tuesday." "Tuesday," I repeated softly. I looked down at the papers, then back up at him. "And what day is it today?" I saw it then. The flicker of a look he exchanged with Jessica, who was lingering in the doorway. It was a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. A smug, knowing glance that said, "She's completely gone. We've won." He patted my shoulder with false tenderness. "It's okay, Mom. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it. I'll take care of everything." I watched him, my mind a fortress of cold clarity behind a facade of senile decay. They thought they were looking at a ruin, a monument to a life that was over. They had no idea they were standing on the epicenter of an earthquake, and the ground was already beginning to shift beneath their feet. Every forgotten name, every repeated question, every moment of feigned confusion was another shovelful of dirt I was tossing on the graves they were digging for themselves. They thought they were winning a war that, for them, hadn't even started. Maria became my silent co-conspirator, a ghost in our machine. Her movements were imbued with a new, quiet purpose. She was no longer just my nurse. She was my intelligence operative. The plan Mr. Davies and I had concocted was simple in its audacity. We would use my children's own tools, their arrogance and their obsession with image, against them. We needed evidence, not just of their neglect, but of their intent. We needed to capture their true selves, the monstrous personalities that emerged when they thought no one was watching. One evening, long after Liam and Jessica had retired to their separate wings of the house to scroll through their meaningless digital lives, Maria arrived. She wasn't in her scrubs. She wore dark clothes and carried a simple tool bag that looked like it belonged to a cable technician. There was no knock. I had left the side door unlocked. I sat in my wheelchair in the darkened living room, the moonlight striping the floor through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and watched her work. She moved with a silent, balletic grace. The first device was a smoke detector for the main hall. It looked identical to the others, but as she twisted it into its ceiling mount, I saw the tiny, almost invisible pinprick of a lens on its side, aimed perfectly at the main staircase and the entrance to the living room. "It has a motion-activated recorder and a 48-hour battery life," she whispered, her voice barely a breath in the cavernous space. "I'll swap the memory cards every 2 days when I come for my shift." The next targets were the power adapters. She replaced the one Liam used for his myriad of charging cables in the study, and the one Jessica kept permanently plugged in by her vanity mirror. They were functional chargers, but they held a secret. Embedded within the black plastic was a high-definition camera and a sensitive microphone. We were building a web, a digital tapestry woven from their own depravity. The weight was excruciating. It was an exercise in absolute control, forcing myself to play the doddering old fool while every fiber of my being screamed to act. But I held my course. I asked Liam if he'd spoken to his father recently. I complimented Jessica on a dress she'd worn the week before, as if seeing it for the first time. Each vacant stare, each confused query, was another layer of camouflage. Their vigilance dissolved into pity, and then into outright contempt. They started having conversations in front of me as if I were a piece of furniture, a potted plant incapable of comprehension. And that's when our web began to catch its flies. 2 days after the installation, Maria came for her afternoon shift. She performed the usual checks, blood pressure, medication, all while her hands moved with deft, unseen speed, swapping the tiny memory cards. Later, when the house was quiet, we huddled over her laptop in my bedroom, the screen's glow illuminating our faces. My heart hammered against my ribs. The first clip was from the study. The camera was angled perfectly. Liam was on the phone, his back to the door. He was laughing. No, man, she didn't suspect a thing," he crowed into his phone. "I told you, she's basically a vegetable. I just told her it was a routine bank form. The full power of attorney is signed, sealed, and delivered. I could sell this house out from under her, and she'd probably just ask me if it's going to rain." He paused, listening to the person on the other end. "The 50 grand? Yeah. That crypto thing was a bust, total loss. But she'll never know. I just printed out a fake statement showing the account was closed. She looked right at it, didn't even register. It's like taking candy from a very, very old baby. A wave of nausea washed over me. It was one thing to suspect it, to know it in my gut. It was another to see it, to hear the casual cruelty, the pride in his voice as he detailed his betrayal. I looked at Maria. Her jaw was tight, her eyes filled with a cold, hard fire. She didn't offer pity, she offered resolve. She simply clicked to the next file. It was from Jessica's room. The camera in the power adapter captured her entire vanity. She was in her silk pajamas, her face a mask of concentration. Her phone was propped up, recording. She was rehearsing. "Hi, guys," she began, her voice cracking with practiced emotion. She brought a hand to her chest. "I wanted to come on here and be really vulnerable with you all today. A lot of you have been asking about my mom." She paused, took a deep breath and squeezed her eyes shut. A single, perfect tear rolled down her cheek. It's just so hard," she whispered. "To watch the strong, brilliant woman who raised you just fade away." She opened her eyes, looking directly into her phone's lens. Her mind, it's not what it used to be. And we're doing everything we can, Liam and I. We've dedicated our lives to making sure she's comfortable. But some days it feels like we're losing her all over again. She held the pose, then her face broke into a frustrated scowl. "No, that's not right. The emphasis is wrong." She wiped the tear away with an angry swipe of her finger. "Let's try again. Maybe I should look off to the side, like I'm remembering something." "Is that more authentic?" She spent the next 20 minutes workshopping her grief, trying different angles, different inflections, different moments to cry. It wasn't a daughter mourning her mother. It was a director coaching an actress for a role, the role of the grieving, devoted child. The video was a masterclass in manufactured emotion, a pristine recording of her soulless ambition. We sat in silence for a long time after the video ended. The only sound was the hum of the laptop. We had it. We had them. Their greed, their lies, their chilling lack of empathy, all captured in high definition. This digital arsenal was more powerful than any legal argument. It was the unvarnished truth, and it would be their undoing. I felt a profound sense of calm settle over me. The emotional storm had passed. Now, all that remained was the cold, patient work of justice. The performance would continue, but now I knew exactly how the final act would play out. A week later, I was back in Mr. Davies' office. This time, Maria was with me. The air in the room was different. The scent of old paper was still there, but now it was mingled with the electric hum of impending victory. Mr. Davies wasn't sitting behind his desk. He was standing beside it, and laid open upon its polished mahogany surface was a massive leather-bound volume. It was my late husband's will, the very document that had served as my prison charter for over a decade. I've read this document and the trust it created at least 100 times over the years, Chloe. Mr. Davies began, his voice low and steady. Richard was a meticulous man. He built legal fortresses. His intention was clear: to keep you tethered to the children, to force a family dynamic he believed was proper. He ran a finger along a line of dense, legalistic text. He created clauses and subclauses, a labyrinth designed to be inescapable. He paused, and a slow, thin smile touched his lips. It was the smile of a man who had just solved a puzzle that had vexed him for years. But even the most meticulous architects can have a blind spot. Richard was proud, he was vain, and he loved his alma mater with a passion that bordered on fanatical. He believed his legacy was tied not just to his political career, but to the institutions that shaped him. He tapped a specific paragraph deep within the trust's foundational text. It wasn't a headline clause. It was buried in a section about philanthropic directives and tax liabilities, a piece of boilerplate legalese most would skim over. "Listen to this," he said, and he read the words that would change everything. "In the event that the primary beneficiary, Chloe Sterling, should make a single, unrestricted charitable donation of no less than $5,000 to the Richard Sterling Public Policy Fund at his alma mater, such an act shall be interpreted as the fulfillment of the testator's lifelong philanthropic commitment." Upon confirmation of said donation, all conditional clauses pertaining to the primary beneficiary's living arrangements and familial oversight shall be rendered immediately null and void. The Richard Sterling Family Trust shall be dissolved, and all assets contained within, including principal and interest, shall be transferred into the sole, unconditional, and unencumbered ownership of the primary beneficiary, Chloe Sterling. The room fell silent. The words hung in the air, shimmering with power. A single donation, $5,000. That was the key. Not a legal battle, not a competency hearing, not a fight. A simple, quiet act of charity was the escape hatch Richard had inadvertently built into my cage. It was a loophole born of his own ego, a final ironic twist of the knife he had tried to leave in my life. He had wanted to be remembered as a great philanthropist by his university, and in his eagerness to cement that legacy, he had given me the means to dismantle his other, more cruel one. I looked at Maria. Her eyes were wide, and for the first time I saw a flicker of raw, unbridled joy on her face. A slow breath escaped my lips. It felt as if a physical weight, one I had carried for so long I had forgotten it was there, was beginning to lift from my shoulders. It wasn't a feeling of elation. It was deeper, more profound. It was the feeling of foundations being reset, of gravity returning to normal. Liam's power of attorney, I said, my voice clear and strong, all traces of the frail old woman gone. Does it allow him to stop this? No, Mr. Davies said with absolute certainty. The POA gives him control over your existing accounts and the ability to act on your behalf in managing the trust as it stands. It does not, however, give him the power to prevent you from fulfilling a specific, personal directive outlined in the will itself. This action is yours, and yours alone to take. Once you make the donation, the trust ceases to exist. His power of attorney over an asset that is no longer in trust becomes meaningless. The entire $32 million estate becomes yours, as if Richard had simply left it to you in a standard will. There was no more discussion. The path was clear, a brightly lit runway after a decade of stumbling through a dark and thorny forest. Mr. Davies swiveled his monitor towards me. He had the university's donation page already pulled up. The Richard Sterling Public Policy Fund was listed right at the top. My hand was perfectly steady as I took the mouse. I navigated to the donation field. I didn't type in 5,000. I typed in 100,000. A small gesture, but a significant one. It was not about fulfilling Richard's clause. It was about overriding it with my own intent. I clicked through the payment screen, entering the details for a personal account I had kept hidden from my children for years. An old professional account from my architect days, with just enough funds for a moment precisely like this. I hit submit. A small green checkmark appeared on the screen. Thank you for your generous donation. And just like that, it was done. In the space of 3 mouse clicks, in the sterile silence of a lawyer's office, I had reclaimed my life. $32 million. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was the freedom it represented. The power to act. The power to protect Maria. The power to build a new legacy, one of my own making. Mr. Davies slid a new stack of documents across the desk. They were fresh from the printer, the ink still smelling sharp. At the top of the first page, in bold letters, were the words, "The Eleanor Vance Foundation Trust," and below that, "Last Will and Testament of Chloe Sterling." They suspect nothing, I said, more a statement than a question. They are at home, arguing about what color to repaint the guest bathroom, Maria confirmed, a hint of dark amusement in her voice. Jessica wants eggshell. Liam wants cloud white. They have no idea the house is no longer theirs to paint. I picked up the heavy, expensive pen Mr. Davies offered me. The weight of it felt good in my hand. It felt like a tool, a weapon. I began to sign. Each signature was a hammer blow, dismantling the old world and forging the new. My children were playing house in a home they no longer owned, dreaming of an inheritance that had already vanished. The checkmate was on the board. All that was left was for them to realize they were already in the game's losing endgame. The end was remarkably quiet. No grand pronouncements, no dramatic deathbed confessions. Just the gentle, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor I'd rented, slowing with practiced precision under the guidance of a doctor whose own mother had been chewed up and spat out by the healthcare system. Maria was by my side, her hand a warm, steady pressure on mine. Her eyes, however, were fixed on the sliver of light under the bedroom door, listening. Dr. Adams, a man with a tired face but fiercely ethical eyes, made the final adjustments, his movements deft and silent. He nodded once, a gesture of finality and solidarity. The monitor flatlined with a long, piercing tone that felt like a starting pistol. From my place of perfect breathing stillness, I listened to the performance begin. First came Jessica's shriek, a sound so perfectly pitched for a tragic Instagram story that it could have won an award. Then Liam's deeper, choked sob, a theatrical noise that I knew was followed by him bracing himself against the doorframe for maximum dramatic effect. "No, Mom, no," he'd bellow, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Maria squeezed my hand, a silent signal. It's working. The next few hours were an exercise in surreal, disembodied observation. I remained in the master suite, a ghost in my own home, while Maria, playing the part of the grieving, loyal nurse, managed the proceedings. I listened to the hushed, sympathetic tones of the funeral director. I heard Jessica on the phone, her voice cracking with expertly performed sorrow as she informed a distant relative before immediately pivoting to a hushed, excited whisper to a friend. "The house alone is worth at least 10, I heard her murmur. "Liam and I will finally be free. Free." The word echoed in the silent room where I sat, very much alive. They thought my death was their liberation. They had no idea it was mine. The social media tributes were a masterpiece of mendacity. Jessica posted a black and white photo of us from years ago, one of the few where I was genuinely smiling. The caption was a novel of fabricated sentiment. "Heaven gained the most beautiful angel today," it began. "My mother, my best friend, my guiding light, Chloe. She was the epitome of grace and strength, a woman who gave everything for her family. My heart is shattered into a million pieces. Rest in paradise, Mommy. Your legacy of love will live on forever." The post garnered hundreds of thousands of likes within the hour. Comments poured in. "So sorry for your loss. She raised an amazing daughter. Sending you so much love." Each one was a small, sharp stab of validation for her lie. Liam's tribute was less eloquent, but equally false. A blurry photo of him and me at his high school graduation. "Lost my biggest fan today. R.I.P. Mom. You were one of a kind." 2 days later, they summoned Mr. Davies. They didn't even wait for a respectable period of mourning. The urgency was palpable, a greedy itch they couldn't stop themselves from scratching. Dressed in tailored, obscenely expensive black outfits, they arranged themselves in my living room. Jessica sat on the edge of the cream-colored sofa, her posture rigid, a Gucci handbag clutched in her lap like a shield. Liam paced in front of the fireplace, trying to project an air of somber authority, but failing, his movements too sharp, too eager. He kept glancing at the mahogany clock on the mantel, as if he could will time to move faster. The room, my room, felt like a stage set for the final act of a play I had written. They thought they were the stars. They were merely the props. Mr. Davies arrived, a man built of tweed and solemn procedure. He carried an old leather briefcase that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 family dramas. He nodded gravely at my children, his expression unreadable. "Jessica, Liam, my deepest condolences." "Thank you, Robert," Jessica said, her voice a soft, breathy whisper. We need to know what she wanted, to honor her final wishes." "Of course," Mr. Davies said, settling into my favorite armchair, the one that caught the morning light just so. He clicked open his briefcase and removed a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with my personal wax stamp, a stylized C that I had designed myself decades ago. The sight of it made my children sit up straighter. This was it, the culmination of their long, patient campaign of cruelty, the jackpot. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. He broke the seal with a small, precise tear. "This is the last will and testament of Chloe Ann Davenport," he began, his voice a low, formal drone. He read through the initial legal boilerplate, the standard phrases and declarations. Liam's foot had started a frantic, silent tapping on the Persian rug. Jessica was so still, she barely seemed to be breathing. Her painted lips parted slightly. "We now come to the bequests," Mr. Davies said, looking over the top of his spectacles at them. He paused, letting the moment stretch. "To my beloved children, Liam Davenport and Jessica Davenport, who in my final years showed me the true, unplumbed depths of human avarice, I leave one item to be shared between them." The word item hung in the air, wrong and dissonant. I could see the confusion flash across Jessica's face, a slight furrow in her perfectly smooth brow. Liam stopped his pacing. Mr. Davies continued, his voice steady. "I leave them the key to storage unit C14 at Secure Space Storage on the Old Mill Road." Silence. Not a stunned silence, but a confused, insulted one. Liam let out a short, sharp laugh, a bark of disbelief. "A storage unit? Is that a joke? What about the accounts, the portfolio?" Jessica shot him a look, a silent command to shut up, but her own mask was cracking. Her face, a carefully constructed facade of grief, was crumbling into raw disbelief. "Robert," she said, her voice losing its breathy quality, becoming sharp and metallic. "There must be a codicil, an addendum, the estate." "The will is quite specific," Mr. Davies said, his gaze unwavering. He turned back to the page. "Inside the storage unit, they will find every photo album from their births to their 18th birthdays. They will find every report card I ever framed, every finger painting from kindergarten, every macaroni necklace, every childhood drawing I ever saved, every trophy, every ribbon, every last tangible piece of a time when they were people I was proud of. May it remind them of who they were before they became what they are." He folded the paper slightly. "That is all." "That is all?" Liam's voice was a low growl. He took a step toward the lawyer. "No, that's not possible. The will my father left. The trust. It all passes to them upon her death. We know how it works." "Ah," Mr. Davies said, a faint, almost imperceptible note of satisfaction in his tone. "That brings us to the remainder of the estate." A wave of relief washed over Jessica's face. Of course. This was just some bizarre, sentimental preamble. The real inheritance was coming. She settled back, her composure returning. Liam held his ground, skeptical but waiting. Mr. Davies took a deep breath, and his voice seemed to swell, filling every corner of the silent room. "The remainder of my estate, which after the dissolution of the prior trust, is currently valued at $32 million, including this house, its contents, and all financial, physical, and digital assets, I bequeath in its entirety." Jessica leaned forward, her eyes wide and gleaming with pure, uncut greed. This was her moment. The number was even bigger than she'd whispered on the phone. $32 million. "To one person," Mr. Davies concluded, his eyes lifting from the page to stare directly into theirs. "Maria Vance." The name landed in the room with no impact at all, a meaningless sound. For a second, there was only a blank, uncomprehending void on their faces. They searched their memories, their Rolodexes of useful people, and came up with nothing. The name was a stranger's. Then the void filled with rage. Liam was the first to break. He lunged forward, his face purpled, a vein throbbing in his temple. "Who the fuck is Maria Vance?" he roared, his voice cracking. "The nurse. You're telling me she left $32 million to the goddamn nurse?" Jessica shot to her feet, her face a mask of white-hot fury. "This is insane. She was a senile old woman. That vulture manipulated her. We will contest this. We will have her declared incompetent. This will not stand, Robert. I will ruin you. I will ruin her." It was the perfect cue. The heavy oak door to the living room swung open. The sound was soft, but in the explosive atmosphere of the room, it was as loud as a gunshot. They both froze, turning to the doorway. And there I stood. I wasn't the frail beige woman in a wheelchair they had discarded. I was dressed in a pantsuit of the deepest crimson, tailored to perfection. My hair was styled, My face was made up, and on my feet were low heels that made a firm, solid sound on the hardwood floor. I looked healthier, stronger, and more alive than I had in a decade. Beside me, calm and resolute, stood Maria. The blood drained from their faces in a simultaneous, horrifying rush. Liam's jaw hung open. Jessica took a single, stumbling step backward, her hand flying to her throat as if to ward off an apparition. They were looking at a ghost. "I am," I said. My voice was not the reedy, weak thing they were used to. It was steady, cold, and carried the weight of $32 million and a lifetime of pain. I let the two words hang in the air, twisting the knife. Then I finished the thought. I am the executor of Maria Vance's inheritance. Jessica's eyes, wide with terror, darted from my face to Maria's, and for the first time, a glimmer of understanding, a horrifying, world-ending understanding, began to dawn. But I wasn't finished. As they stood there, paralyzed in a tableau of disbelief and horror, a subtle change began in the room. The dozen digital photo frames on the mantel and side tables, which had been cycling through anodyne pictures of landscapes since my death, all flickered at once. They didn't go dark. Instead, a new image appeared on every screen. It was a video, crystal clear, the audio sharp and clean. It was Jessica, filmed from a low angle, leaning conspiratorially towards Liam in the kitchen a few months ago. "She's so out of it," my daughter's voice sneered from a dozen screens at once. "She just sits there, drooling. Honestly, putting her in that state home was the best idea we ever had. 2 weeks in Maui and she didn't even notice." Liam's face on screen broke into a cruel smirk. "She probably thinks it's a 5-star resort. The old bat wouldn't know the difference." Jessica's real-life face was a canvas of pure horror. Her eyes darted to the largest screen, the one embedded in the wall over the fireplace. The scene changed. Now it was Liam, in his home office on the phone. "Yeah, $50K, he bragged to some unseen friend. "Right out of her main account. I told her the bank froze it, forged a statement, and everything. She just nodded. It's like taking candy from a very, very rich baby." A small, familiar icon appeared in the top right corner of every screen, a red rectangle with the word "Live" in white. Beneath it, a view counter began to spin, ticking upwards at a dizzying pace. 10,000, 50,000, 200,000. A live feed of comments started scrolling on the right side of the main screen, a waterfall of shock and disgust. The feed was being streamed directly and simultaneously to Jessica's 1.2 million Instagram followers. I watched the color, the life, the future drain out of my children's faces. They were frozen, trapped between the ghost in the doorway and the digital execution happening on every screen around them, their carefully constructed world burning to the ground in real time for all the world to see. The sound that broke the stunned silence wasn't a gasp or a sob. It was a digital scream, a single, sharp notification from Jessica's phone lying on the polished mahogany of the lawyer's desk, then another, and another. The single pings coalesced into a frantic, unceasing buzz, a swarm of electronic hornets rising from the device. Her phone began to vibrate violently, skittering across the wood like a mortally wounded insect. Jessica stared at it, her face a mask of disbelief. The perfectly crafted image of the grieving, devoted daughter was cracking, spiderwebbing under the pressure of a million unseen judgments. Her eyes, wide with a horror that was finally, blessedly real, flickered from the vibrating phone to the live stream monitor, where her own curated world was burning down in a torrent of comments I could only imagine. Phrases like fraud, monster, and justice for Chloe were likely scrolling past in a furious, unending cascade. The 1.2 million followers she had so carefully cultivated were now 1.2 million witnesses to her execution. "No," she whispered, a dry, rasping sound. She reached for the phone, but her hand trembled too much to grasp it. "No, this is a lie. A deepfake. Mother, how could you?" Liam, ever the blusterer, found his voice first, though it was frayed with panic. "She's lost her mind," he bellowed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Mr. Davies, You can't possibly take this seriously. She's a confused old woman. We have doctor's notes. We have power of attorney. This is slander." Mr. Davies didn't even look at him. His gaze was fixed on me, a small, almost imperceptible nod of confirmation passing between us. He had played his part perfectly. He then calmly picked up his own phone and pressed a single button. "The authorities have been notified, Liam," he said, his voice as cold and hard as granite. "Not just for the conspiracy to defraud your mother, but for the forged documents you had her sign. Forgery, I believe, carries a rather significant penalty." The color drained from Liam's face. The bravado evaporated, leaving behind the raw, pathetic fear of a schoolyard bully who had finally punched someone who could punch back. He opened his mouth, then closed it, a fish gasping for air in a polluted pond. The grand double doors of the drawing room swung open, not with a dramatic flourish, but with a quiet, professional efficiency. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. They were not aggressive. Their presence was a simple statement of fact, an undeniable conclusion to the equation my children had written. Their eyes swept the room, taking in the scene. Me, serene in my crimson suit. Maria, a pillar of quiet strength at my side. Mr. Davies, the calm arbiter of justice. And my 2 children, utterly broken. One officer approached Liam. "Liam Sterling?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. Liam could only nod, his entire body shaking. "You are under arrest for financial fraud and forgery. You have the right to remain silent." The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was louder than a gunshot in the silent room. It was a sound of finality, the closing of a door that would never reopen. Liam didn't struggle. All the fight had gone out of him. He looked small, insignificant, stripped of the arrogance that had been his only armor. As the officers led him away, 2 other men, dressed in simple black suits, entered the room. My security team. I had hired them weeks ago, anticipating this very moment. They were not house staff. They were strangers, their faces impassive, their purpose singular. They moved towards Jessica. She had finally managed to pick up her phone. Her thumb swiped frantically across the screen, her breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps as she witnessed the real-time demolition of her life's work. Her empire of lies, built on my suffering, had crumbled to dust in less than 5 minutes. "Ma'am," one of the guards said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "You need to leave the premises." "Leave?" she shrieked, her voice pitching into a hysterical register. "This is my home." "No," I said, speaking for the first time since my entrance. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her hysteria like a surgeon's scalpel. "It was never your home, Jessica. It was your stage, and the show is over." Her head snapped toward me, her eyes blazing with a lifetime of resentment. "You did this," she spat. "You ruined me." "No, my dear," I replied, my tone even. "You ruined yourself. I simply turned on the lights." The guards each took one of her arms, their grip gentle but unyielding. She didn't fight, her body going limp with the shock of her new reality. They escorted her towards the door, past the priceless art she never appreciated, across the Persian rugs she only saw as a backdrop for her selfies. As she passed, her phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the marble floor of the foyer, the screen shattering into a spiderweb of glass. The buzzing finally stopped. At the doorway, she turned for one last look. I expected to see hatred, or perhaps even a flicker of remorse. I saw neither. I saw only a vast, empty confusion. The look of a person who has followed a map their entire life, only to discover, at the very end, that it led them off a cliff. Then they were gone. The great doors closed, muffling the sound of a distant siren. And for the first time in more than a decade, the house was silent. It wasn't an empty silence. It wasn't the lonely silence of my confinement. It was a clean silence. A silence full of possibility, like the pristine surface of a fresh canvas. The air, once thick with deceit and cloying with the perfume of false affection, felt light. The house took a deep, cleansing breath, and so did I. That silence became the foundation for what came next. Over the weeks and months that followed, the house transformed alongside me. The cold, minimalist furniture Jessica had insisted upon, all hard lines and sterile whites, was removed. In its place came warmth, deep, comfortable armchairs, shelves filled with books instead of meaningless ornaments, and vibrant art that celebrated life, not status. The scent of lemon polish and stale air was replaced by the aroma of fresh coffee, of baking bread from the kitchen, of flowering jasmine drifting in from the newly planted garden. The house was no longer a showroom or a prison. It was becoming a sanctuary. 6 months after that day, the transformation was complete. A tasteful, hand-carved wooden sign now stood at the end of the long driveway. It didn't bear my name or Richard's. It read, "The Eleanor Vance House, a haven for the silenced." The late afternoon sun cast long, gentle shadows across the porch where Maria and I sat. The air was warm, filled with the hum of bees in the rose bushes. Between us, on a small wooden table, sat a stack of papers. A proposal for a new outreach program, a legal aid fund for those trapped in situations like the one I had escaped. My fingers traced the architectural plans for a new wing, a space for temporary residents. I watched Maria as she read through a testimonial from a woman we had recently helped, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. There was an easy peace between us, a partnership forged not in blood or obligation, but in shared purpose and mutual respect. And we were not just survivors, piecing together the fragments of our lives. We were architects, drawing up the blueprints for a new kind of justice. I leaned back in my chair, the wood warm against my back, and looked out over the sprawling lawn. I remembered standing in this exact spot so many times, a prop in Jessica's social media fantasies, a prisoner in the gilded cage my husband had built. I had been an object, a name on a trust fund, a ghost haunting the halls of my own home. But now, feeling the comforting weight of the proposal in my lap, I understood. I am not a prop. I am not a prisoner. For the first time since I was a young woman, full of dreams and sketching skylines against a limitless sky, I am free. And this, my true legacy, is just beginning.